In completing their grand plan to destroy the Jedi Order and the Republic, the Clone War was a crucial component to the plan of the Sith, the result of decades of planning by Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious. However, as Sidious understood a decade before the galactic conflict began, the Clone War would also be an important element in Anakin Skywalker's path towards the Sith and dark side of the Force. Although we could say that the entire Clone Wars was significant in this way to Anakin, today we'll look at one specific battle that influenced Anakin's path to becoming Darth Vader. As seen within the Legends novels Labyrinth of Evil and the Episode 3 novelization, it was a battle that was still being remembered by Anakin in the final weeks and days of the Clone War, years after it was over. This battle was the Battle of Jabim. We'll start by briefly looking at the Battle of Jabim itself, and then we'll explain why this battle was so important to Anakin's ultimate choice to join Sidious and the dark side of the Force. The Battle of Jabim was a brutal one, taking place in the first year of the Clone War on the Outer Rim planet of Jabim. Fighting would of course take place between the forces of the Republic, consisting of numerous Jedi including Anakin and Obi-Wan and thousands of clone troopers, and the forces of the Separatists, with different organizations on Jabim also allying themselves to each side as well. However, aside from the difficulties experienced through the fighting itself, the Republic's efforts were made even more difficult given the terrain and weather conditions on Jabim. The Battle of Jabim would leave such an important impact on Anakin for a number of reasons, separate from the brutality of the battle. First, it was believed that Obi-Wan was killed during one of the numerous confrontations of the battle. Obi-Wan would of course survive, but Anakin still had to deal with what he believed at the time was the loss of his friend Obi-Wan, which unsurprisingly was tremendously difficult for Anakin. Second, Anakin was forced to experience the significant losses that occurred all around him. By day 30 of the Battle of Jabim, 18 Jedi and 9,000 clone troopers were killed in battle, those who Anakin was fighting beside. When Sidious planned to make Anakin his Sith apprentice in the aftermath of the events of the Phantom Menace, he recognized that one of the most important elements to bringing Anakin to the Sith and dark side would be for Anakin to grow embittered through a number of different consequences, one of which would be in watching his fellow Jedi fall in conflicts they wouldn't be able to avoid. In the Battle of Jabim, Anakin would experience this significantly in the first 30 days of fighting, watching 18 Jedi and thousands of clone troopers fall in the battle. But there was another important element outside of those with Obi-Wan and the significant Jedi and clone trooper losses during the battle, which would also be important to why the Battle of Jabim would ultimately be crucial in Anakin's path towards the Sith Order. Eventually, after 37 days of brutal fighting, the Republic decided to order a full evacuation of Jabim. However, a group of Jedi Padawans, including Anakin, recognized the Republic wouldn't be able to evacuate in time, as their opposition was quickly closing in around them. Anakin then suggested that they simply try to slow down their advance to give the evacuation efforts more time, and more of a chance to succeed, with the other Jedi Padawans knowing they wouldn't survive if they chose that option. But every remaining Jedi agreed with Anakin's suggestion, and accepted their fate. This initially included Anakin as well. However, as preparations were being made, Anakin received a request to speak with Palpatine himself, who informed Anakin he was needed to lead the evacuation efforts. Although Anakin at first refused to abandon his friends, Palpatine made it clear that they couldn't let the evacuation become chaotic, and Palpatine expressly put his trust and faith in Anakin to assist the Republic in these efforts, with Anakin ultimately agreeing to leave the remaining Jedi Padawans to assist the evacuation, despite his frustration with the situation. As predicted, and as the Padawans fully knew themselves, each of them died fighting heroically on the battlefield over the next few days, attempting to give the Republic's evacuation efforts on Jabim the best chance possible. On day 43 of the battle, the Republic's ships arrived, with Anakin leading the evacuation, knowing the sacrifice the other Jedi had made over the previous few days. However, given the conditions of Jabim, there weren't enough transports to evacuate everyone, forcing Anakin to have to make the decision of who would evacuate and who would be forced to remain upon Jabim. Anakin ultimately chose the clone troopers for evacuation, believing they would be needed in other battles across the galaxy, with those from Jabim having to stay behind. This of course infuriated them, and after a captain punched Anakin and appeared to be refusing to stand down, Anakin ordered the captain to do so, reaching out with the Force to choke him, demonstrating just how much the entire battle had affected him. But after the difficulties of the evacuation, Anakin would then also be significantly impacted by the sacrifice made by the Jedi in the final days of the battle. When given an opportunity to mourn and remember them at a memorial site following the Battle of Jabim, a visibly devastated Anakin individually named and honored each of the fallen Jedi Padawans, his friends, who gave their lives on Jabim. Although the Battle of Jabim occurred in the first year of the Clone War, the event still stayed with Anakin over the next few years, demonstrating that the battle wasn't simply important to Anakin's path to the dark side of the Force in the moment, but had a long-term importance in the decisions made by Anakin during Episode 3. In the novel Labyrinth of Evil, in one of the Jedi Knight's final missions of the Clone War, and just prior to the Battle of Coruscant, Anakin traveled to the planet of Cato Nemoidia, attempting to capture the Trade Federation's nuke gunray. As Anakin closed in on Gunray, the novel explains that fury began to cloud Anakin's eyes, and instead of simply calling upon the Force, he chose to call upon his anger. To do so, he began to envision images from the past as a way to fuel his rage, remembering experiences such as his attack on the Tusken Raider camp in Episode 2. However, important for our video here, Anakin also remembered images from the Republic's defeat on Jabim years earlier, demonstrating the connection the Battle of Jabim had as a way for Anakin to tap into his anger and rage. Despite the fact that years had passed and many other important and devastating battles were fought since then, the Battle of Jabim was what Anakin turned to when he needed to ignite his rage. Important steps on Anakin's path to the dark side. But as seen within the Revenge of the Sith novelization, the Battle of Jabim was also the catalyst for some of Anakin's actions in Episode 3, particularly in his duel against Dooku. Importantly, Obi-Wan also recognized the important consequences the Battle of Jabim had for Anakin, as they attempted to rescue Palpatine from the Separatists. Although Obi-Wan understood that Anakin wasn't the same since Geonosis and the start of the Clone War, he also specifically considered the Battle of Jabim, understanding that while the galactic conflict had changed Anakin, that battle was particularly important to Anakin and who he was by the time of Episode 3. The difficulties of overcoming Jabim and what happened there was also understood by Anakin himself during the Battle of Coruscant and during his attempt to rescue Palpatine, recognizing that flying helped him to forget about the terrible and brutal actions he experienced during his life and the Clone War, specifically noting his desire to forget about the Battle of Jabim. As Anakin saw it, just prior to his duel with Dooku, Jabim was a cloud upon his heart, and as his emotions became ignited through his motivation to rescue Palpatine, it was his experience in the Battle of Jabim that initiated the thunder within him. Again, this is to say that there was a clear connection between what Anakin experienced in the Battle of Jabim and what fueled his emotions. And this occurred not only on Cato Nemoidia, but also prior to his final duel with Dooku during the Battle of Coruscant. But most importantly, the Episode 3 novelization does an excellent job of demonstrating how Anakin's decision to utilize his rage, anger, and fury allowed him to overcome the terrible consequences he experienced during the Battle of Jabim, which is to say, how the dark side allowed Anakin to remove the clouds upon his heart and quiet the thunder that existed within him after Jabim. In the final moments of his duel with Dooku, taking a significant step towards the dark side of the Force by utilizing his rage as a weapon, which occurred through Palpatine expressly telling Anakin to do so in the novel, and Anakin recognizing it himself after he was taunted by Dooku in the film, Anakin recognized how the dark side could alleviate the fear and rage he felt in the aftermath of situations like those experienced on Jabim. Anakin realized that many events and experiences during his life and during the Clone War, but specifically considering the Battle of Jabim itself, had clouded his mind, hindering his abilities significantly. However, as Anakin tapped into the dark side during the final moments of his duel with Dooku, the fear and rage created in the aftermath of Jabim no longer hindered him by clouding his mind, but was instead fuel to be used in the duel itself, now an ally for Anakin rather than an enemy to be overcome. The Episode 3 novelization does a great job of showing why the Battle of Jabim helped push Anakin to the Sith and dark side of the Force in this way. Without question, the brutality of the Battle of Jabim and the numerous losses Anakin witnessed in the battle did assist in causing the Jedi Knight to become embittered, as Palpatine knew it would more than a decade earlier. But Anakin also learned another important lesson in his attempts to overcome the devastating effects he was left with through the battle itself. As seen in his final duel with Dooku, Anakin recognized that the fear and rage he was left with after Jabim, and after other events during his life and the Clone War, could become an ally for him through his utilizing the dark side of the Force. The elements that plagued Anakin the most after Jabim would no longer cloud his thoughts, but instead could be made clear if he used them as fuel through the dark side, using them in his own actions instead of having them continue to consume him. Although there were other motivations in his choice to ally with Sidious, Anakin would find tremendous value in the dark side of the Force as he learned it could help him to overcome elements that continually devastated him following the Battle of Jabim. In the end, finding it difficult to move past the negative aspects he couldn't let go of after Jabim, the dark side provided Anakin with at least some way of doing so, which unfortunately for the Jedi Knight would itself bring its own tragic, unavoidable consequences. So there we have it, how the Battle of Jabim influenced Anakin's path to the Sith Order. Thank you very much to all of the Patreon members of Star Wars Reading Club, as your support is so greatly appreciated. You can find all of our social media links and a link to our Star Wars gaming channel in the description below for updates and even more Star Wars content. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me... For Amazing Legends Clone Wars battles.